From vinyl to 8 tracks to cassette tapes to CDs, the commercial availability of music had taken on various forms throughout the 20th century. And now, in the mid-90s, a new development was on the horizon. What if music forewent the traditional methods of manufacture and distribution to grant greater artistic and professional independence to the artist, away from the suffocating shadows of major record companies? Harry Allen seemed to believe in that possibility. A journalist affiliated with Public Enemy as the group's publicist, Allen appeared in the track Harry Allen's interactive superhighway phone call to Chuck D off the 1994 album Music in Our Message. The track is in the form of a recorded voicemail from Allen to PE frontman Chuck D about the advance of technology eventually disintegrating the monopoly of record labels by decentralizing the manufacture, distribution, and availability of music. And the main agent that would make it possible is the internet. By the mid-90s, people could communicate through a system of interconnected computer networks. The concept of being online was beginning to emerge, and that began to apply to music. Why does one have to go to the store to grab a physical copy of an album when they could receive it, either in physical or digital form, from the comfort of one's own home? And why lease the power to make that call for music consumers to companies willing and able to squeeze every last cent from their signees? Public Enemy wasn't the only hip-hop act preparing the next phase of their career to accommodate the technological revolution about to take place by the turn of the century. Chuck D's homeboy, Ice-T, was already on the same wavelength. He already had his home set up at a time when most artists traditionally logged in at a professional recording studio. And at a press conference in the UK in May 1995, Ice explained to the attendees that he was setting up something called a website, a place where people could gain access to his work over the internet, a place free from the prying eyes of censorship watchdogs, the creative constraints of record labels, the supply chain of record stores, and the limitations of traditional manufacture and distribution. To paraphrase his words at that press conference, Ice-T was preparing to take over the world. For world domination to seem at least more realistic, Ice-T needed a label. By 1999, he was no longer with Priority Records for distribution, and Rhyme Syndicate had seemingly ceased to exist. In the place of Ice's music, media, and artistic management enterprise was Coroner Records, so named with the intention of overseeing the ignoble end of the traditional music industry. Coroner Records was going to partner with a much more experienced player, Roadrunner Records, a Netherlands-based company established in 1980 that became one of the larger purveyors of heavy metal acts. And for digital distribution, Ice employed the services of Atomic Pop Records, a company in the form of a website that enabled end users to purchase music from various performers, Public Enemy being among them. Atomic Pop's founder, Alvin Teller, had been a chief executive in the music business for almost 3 decades. But when he resigned from MCA Music Entertainment Group in 1995, coincidentally, around the time when the internet was commercialized for public use, he eventually, to borrow a term from the wrestling entertainment world, did something that garnered the scorn of his industry's big wigs. He turned heel. Because who in their right frame of mind would offer artists 50% of the gross profit of their releases and ownership of their masters, as opposed to just being satisfied with the benevolence of roughly 10% of retail sales while trying to recoup millions of dollars of investment? Well, Al wasn't worried about that. Operating Atomic Pop from a relatively inexpensive rented office space in Santa Monica, California, Teller planned to make a profit by promoting his artists online, rather than going on radio and MTV. Plus, regarding shooting music videos, booking studio recording time, handling merch, going on tour, and all that stuff, that would be for the artists to take care of. It seemed like a great deal to someone like Ice-T, who craved a greater level of independence. And the internet seemed exciting. But Ice was going to have to do a lot more of the heavy lifting. And the internet was still new and largely unproven, not even close to the capabilities and ubiquity it would achieve in the 21st century. In addition, Ice-T was past his artistic and commercial prime. With hip-hop now peaking in visibility and mainstream acceptance, the new crop of hardcore rappers would enjoy the fruits from the labor of previous generations to which Ice belonged. Who was going to check out the newest Ice-T rap album when there were fresher faces like DMX or Eminem, the latter performed with the O.D.G on the same 1999 Vans Warped Tour, available to rile up society and get consumers hyped? It was clear to Ice-T by that point in his career that he would never be a multi-platinum selling rapper. Nevertheless, he carried on with his plan. The seventh album, Seventh Deadly Sin, was made available online on September 12, 1999. This is how it worked. End users could purchase the album in two forms, as a CD and as a download in the form of digital audio files that were collectively being referred to as MP3 from either Coroner.com or AtomicPop.com. Darlene Ortiz of Power fame, Ice-T's longtime squeeze and mother to his then 8-year-old son, was still around to professionally do what she did best.
When you go to the Coroner Records Rent web page, that's her right there with her butt sticking out. And people are like, oh, well, I mean, no, she's spending the money too, you know what I'm saying? So when it's time to promote, she throws it. Here's Darlene right here.
Oh, damn! Shit.
This is 10 years after the Power album cover, see?
It ain't changed a bit either.
And no, if you were skittish about shopping online and wanted to go to your neighborhood record store for the physical copy instead, well, you'd have to wait for a full month for that. That's what Roadrunner was for. But was the album worth this novel distribution technique and strategy? With an album title alluding to Ice's 7th LP, as well as its aura and cover art inspired by the blockbuster 1995 crime thriller Seven, which is based on a series of killings fueled by the seven deadly sins concept in the Christian tradition, Seventh Deadly Sin promised intrigue. Whether it was going to deliver was another matter altogether. Although Evil E was no longer around as Ice's DJ on record, his brother Hen G stepped up as co-executive producer, and SLJ was still around, forming the remaining vestiges of the Rhyme Syndicate. DJ Ace comes back for a second go-around as one of Ice-T's main producers, in addition to being the DJ replacement, and Ice himself goes back to co-producing a majority of the tracks. The overall sound bed had to be strong because by this point, forget getting anything new or substantially profound from the Iceman. Over the past few years, his side project, Body Count, had blossomed into a full-time occupation, seemingly relegating Ice-T's rap career to pastime status. An event such as the O.J. Simpson trial that got only half a couplet in 6, Return of the Real, received an entire song treatment in the rock group's third album, Violence Demise, The Last Days. So, Ice-T's focus was shifting to metal and, eventually, the small screen. But at least Seventh Deadly Sin starts off strong. After roaring through the movie score-styled intro, preceded by dialogue sampled from Seven, Ice goes into familiar player mode in Don't Hate the Player, salvaged by his spirited delivery and his and DJ Ace's sinister soundtrack. Shifting into Check Your Game brings on board Comptonite King T to trade lively verses with the O.G. amid a foreboding plucked string soundscape. But something's terribly off, especially with Ice-T. For a guy who had complained in a CNN interview that he was being referred to as a gangster rapper, he sure was embracing that designation by his actions. Case in point, God Forgive Me, which finds him gloating over unleashing the gangster rap subgenre to the entire world like some sort of unstoppable pestilence. You would have thought the concept of reality rap, which he created and to which he has undisputable claim, never existed. Ditto to Schoolie D and NWA, who contributed in no small measure to gangster rap's creation. And judging by the lackluster verses of former Rap-A-Lot West signee Papa LQ and producer SLJ, it doesn't sound like a creation to be proud of. At least the spooky string stabbing beat is worth the price of admission. But this is Ice-T for the 9-9 into 2000, words Juvenile. Sloppy rhyming, bundling gangster rap tropes of pimping, drug dealing, and gang activity. Essentially a retread of the immediate preceding album, Return of the Real, but worse. There's barely a rhyme from the Iceman that sticks, and that's accompanied by beat work that ranges from borderline competent to unremarkable. The descent starts with Get Your Money Man, which is a sparse bore of flossing, and goes downhill from there. The absolute worst of Seventh Deadly Sin occurs with Valuable Game and Always Wanted to Be a Hoe. Tributes to Tupac and the Notorious B.I.G. were very common in the late 90s, and Ice-T submitted his entry with Valuable Game, which should have been a sterling symbol of his unifying bi-coastal aura and overall O.G. status. Instead, what we get is a rambling, offbeat collection of 3 verses over the instrumental of En Vogue's nearly #1 pop hit from the Set It Off soundtrack, Don't Let Go, with a screeching female vocalist in place of the powerhouse singing quartet. Noble idea, terrible execution. Always Wanted to Be a Hoe is even worse, with Ice grooming an underage girl to be his chief money maker, to put it delicately.
I always wanted to be a hoe. I always wanted to be a hoe.
Yeah, the girl who sings the hook doesn't even get the dignity of being properly credited. Instead, she's described as Ice's hoe. Whatever third-person devices Ice-T employed during the early part of his career, from vivid depictions of the street life to its moral consequences, lost their sheen by the time Seventh Deadly Sin rolled by. Ice as a storyteller in this album comes off as a superhero without his cape. Check Your Hearts is yet another song dealing with disloyalty, featuring Ice on a murderous rampage. At least he feels more engaged with the subject matter than in Common Sense, a dreary number that has him narrating the tale of a self-centered gangster with the enthusiasm of an obligatory reading of remarks at a press conference. And the only reason why this self-explanatory retaliation stands out, apart from the eerie organ-helmed soundtrack, is the similarity between the cadence of Ice and a certain MC from Queensbridge.
Up, we know who you are, where you live. We got your place, ran up to a cop on the tape. We'll hit your block so hard.
Notably, the hook samples the vocals of Mobb Deep's Prodigy from the song Hoodlum. So there's nothing on the level of 6 in the Morning, Colors, or Midnight here, and the guests hardly help. Exceptions are made for the aforementioned King T, as well as for Ras Kass on the 7th, where he steals the show with his trademark off-kilter rhymes.
The Blade Runner, my game's tight. I can talk to Virgin Mary out of panties the same night.
Otherwise, in an album that's the most guest-stuffed of Ice-T's career, there are a lack of truly standout moments. Power Lord Gel returns from Return of the Real to join El Sadiq for a forgettable contribution to F*** It. Gripsta of Home Invasion fame, once a promising protege of Ice, gets lost with 2 no-names in the generically named hardcore, and Buckshot of Black Moon is shockingly unexcited on Eye of the Storm as he trades verses with the album's host. Forget about getting anybody open. It's a shame because Seventh Deadly Sin plays out like a tribute album. Through integrated and detached interludes, a bevy of contemporaries and younger MCs in the rap game pay their respects as though they're at the presence of a sage on his deathbed. It does feel like an impending retirement without Ice-T declaring that it is one, but if it was, it should have been with a better output than this. At least with songs like the breezy NYNY, Ice-T drives the following point home, that he isn't with the Coastal War bullcrap.
Never die, Ice, baby, it's a well-known fact that true players play the whole map.
With the album closer, Ice's Exodus, riding on the chariot that's the title soundtrack for the 1960 epic film Exodus, Ice-T's legacy is secure, as he names what exactly the 7th Deadly Sin is: hardcore rap. And while parts of it morphed into a contagion that consumed 2 of hip-hop's finest, the elder statesman makes an appeal for peace across the genre's geographical regions by putting himself up as an example.
Hip-hop's been good to a nigga. I got mad love for the East Coast, West Coast, North and South.
7th Deadly Sin was doomed from the beginning. It was bad enough that barely anyone was going to care about what a middle-aged rapper had to say, in a genre that was still very much creatively and culturally defined by youth. In 1999, less than 30% of US households had internet access, and that access was primarily dominated by dial-up connections at a data transfer rate of 56 kilobytes per second, prehistoric by 21st century standards. Plus, ownership of a personal computer, or PC, the only major device used for such access, was just around 50% among US households. The chances of achieving a major breakthrough or commercial splash with strictly selling an album online were slim to none. As though acquiescing halfway to the established music distribution landscape while holding on to hope of continued advancement of the World Wide Web, Ice-T made 7th Deadly Sin available in brick-and-mortar stores on October 12, 1999, exactly a month after its debut online. Plus, 2 singles were released, Exodus, and Valuable Game, each available as a CD and on 12-inch vinyl. It hardly made a difference. Seventh Deadly Sin was a commercial dud. Neither the album nor its singles charted. It was the first album cycle blank out of Ice-T's career. And consequently, it wasn't like all three entities involved in the project were going to be around for another shot at an online revolution. Ice-T's Coroner Records oversaw only one more LP release, a compilation of the MC's standout songs named Greatest Hits, The Evidence, in 2000. In September of that year, Atomic Pop closed its doors, unable to solve its cash crunch and find financial backers, and becoming one of the numerous victims of the dot-com crash. The enterprise had barely lasted 2 years. And Roadrunner would hang on until November 2010, when it was fully acquired by a company that Ice-T was very familiar with, Warner. A lot changed after 1999, even if the major record labels continued to maintain their position in a changing climate. Data transfer speeds graduated from kilobytes to megabytes and gigabytes per second, and dial-up connections and Ethernet evolved into broadband internet and Wi-Fi. Virtually everyone in the US can now access the internet, which is no longer restricted to PCs. Online advertising and purchasing of goods and services, not just music, has become conventional and definitely a treasured convenience. CDs, downloads, and music video TV channels gave way to streaming services and video sharing platforms. And as hip-hop aged, the idea of older MCs still churning out culturally relevant music became more of a possibility, culminating in the success of Clips's comeback album 2025's Let God Sort 'Em Out. However, the aforementioned advances couldn't have elevated Seventh Deadly Sin, whether the year was 1999, 2025, or 3000. Ice-T, no longer running on the fumes of his prime, is reduced to a parody of his former self, over mostly underwhelming beats and surrounded by vassals that barely nourish him with their tributes and presence. Granted, Ice-T is one of hip-hop's greatest innovators, but the trailblazing that he probably expected with Seventh Deadly Sin turned out to be something completely unintended. If any MC was to learn anything from his seventh album, the first major one released by a middle-aged rap artist, it was on what not to do. Maybe, just maybe, that's worth forgiveness for this type of transgression. Thanks for watching. For those new here, welcome to Rap Perspective. For the Rappleheads, I greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget to like, comment on, and share this video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. And I encourage everyone to watch, like, comment on, and share other videos on here. See you in the next video.